I sat motionless, paralyzed, while my wife of 25 years explained why she was filing for divorce. I heard only half of what she said. Gary, are you listening to me? You look stunned. Listen carefully, okay? This is important. I'm sorry. I was distracted for a moment. What were you saying? The terms are simple. There's nothing to argue about. I'm not asking for anything. Do you hear me? Absolutely nothing. You get to keep the house, the cars, and all the money in the bank. If you sign, it'll be over in 3 months. I didn't know what to say. Marcy and I had been married since high school. We had two beautiful twin daughters. Cindy and Sandy were studying international banking at Columbia University. We had a beautiful house in the suburbs and we both drove Volvos. Marcy had her own credit cards and cell phone. I never denied her anything. I never cheated on her, insulted her, or raised my hand to her. She never showed that she was unhappy and never complained about anything. I couldn't have been more unprepared for this turn of events. I never noticed that anything was wrong. Maybe that was the problem. I didn't pay attention. I understand how divorce works, Marcy, but can you explain to me why? It's probably too late to do anything, but I'd like to know why. Marcy seemed to collapse into a kitchen chair. It was obvious she didn't want to discuss the reasons and hoped I would just sign the papers and let her go. Just tell me briefly, Marcy, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything, Gary. You were the perfect husband. Sometimes I hoped you would screw up and give me a reason to leave, but you never did. You raised the children well and gave them an education. You always gave me everything I wanted, even when I was unreasonable. You bought me a beautiful house. My parents love you. Don't ever think you did anything wrong because you didn't. She was about 45 years old. She had a beautiful complexion and perfect hair. It was light brown and shone in the sun. She ran regularly, and her body was toned and tanned. On weekdays, she looked like a girl off the cover of Land's End magazine, but when she needed to, she could look glamorous. Marcy was as perfect as I was, as she claimed. I just couldn't understand the meaning of it all. I'm sorry, this doesn't make sense. There has to be a reason. You can't just say everything's fine and walk away. There has to be a reason. Gary, I'm trying to do this in a way that doesn't hurt your feelings or make me look bad. Let's just leave things as they are, okay? No. Gary, I found another man. He works in real estate. He has a beautiful apartment with a view of the river and a nice black Mercedes. He's handsome, rich, and madly in love with me. You were and always will be a supermarket clerk. I don't look down on your job because you've always taken care of us and always made enough money to keep our family from living in poverty, but you'll always be a grocery store clerk. I wanted more. I couldn't imagine you would do this for me. You were always happy with what you did, and I never saw you try to improve your life. It hurt. I was a product manager, and she still thought I was a salesman. When I had a chance to advance my career and leave town, I turned it down to keep my family together, and this is how I was rewarded. It hurt, but it's not worth talking about. Does this rich, handsome guy have a name? Clayton Manning. He's the president of Keystone Development Company. How long have you known him? 6 months. Did you sleep with him? Marcy sat up straight in her chair. Her eyes darted around the room and finally she looked me in the face. Yes, I've been trying to avoid this, but since you insist, yes. You were still married. Yes, I was still married. I cheated on you. I was an adulteress. I was a whore. Are you happy now? I sat there for a moment, then reached over, took the divorce papers, signed them in 3 places, initialed them, and handed them back to her across the table. I think he's a better man than I am. I'm sorry I disappointed you. I stood up and, as I was leaving the room, I shouted to Marcy, "Damn it, no! That's not the reason. He wasn't better than you. He was just different. Don't you dare leave believing that, Gary. Don't you dare." By that time, I was already out the door. I was so absorbed in my work and hobbies that I didn't even notice Marcy slowly moving her things out of the house. By the time she handed me the papers, she had already moved most of her clothes and personal belongings to Clayton's apartment. She had thoughtfully left all the wedding and family photos so I could enjoy them in her absence. When I got home, she was gone. Her Volvo was still in the driveway, and I decided she wouldn't need it anymore. On the kitchen table, she left a power of attorney to sell the house and the car. I spent the rest of the night getting rid of the beer in the fridge. By then, I knew it was over. There was no going back, and I didn't want to go back. Marcy was gone, and she wasn't coming back. The next morning, I called work and took 3 months of vacation that I had earned a long time ago. They had been trying to get me to take some time off, so it wasn't a problem. I had a lot of vacation and sick days. I quickly called the girls at school and briefly explained that we had broken up, but refused to give them any further information. They wanted to call Marcy, but I didn't have her new phone number. I had 3 months to gather my thoughts and decide what to do. I disconnected the landline. I changed my cell phone number and canceled the one Marcy had. The Volvo dealer gave me a low market value for Marcy's car. I had a friend from high school, Terry Davis, who was now a real estate agent. He agreed to sell the house without advertising at a low price and with quick settlement. Just in case, I canceled all my credit cards and opened new bank accounts. I cashed in my life insurance policies. It was time to clean up the house. I went through the house and packed up everything that might have belonged to my wife. There were 3 garbage bags full. I packed my daughter's personal belongings into boxes and took them to a storage room next to the house. I spent 3 hours sorting through family photos. I put all of my daughter's photos in a box for her. All of Marcy's photos went into the trash. I know it was stupid, but I didn't care. The main problem I faced was that I had no goal. I had no idea what I would be doing in 3 months. Would I stay here or leave? Would I continue working or find something new? I had 2 hobbies. I collected coins, mostly pennies with images of Native Americans. They were easy to collect and readily available. I bought and sold them on eBay and enjoyed it. My second hobby was geocaching. It gave me a reason to get outside and stretch my legs. Marcy hated it because of the ticks, poison ivy, and the walking. I didn't see how either of these hobbies could be a career. When I wasn't busy with my hobbies, I read the Wall Street Journal. Cindy and Sandy gave me a subscription to the paper every Christmas. I wasn't interested in stocks and bonds, but I read everything about agricultural commodities. I knew more about sugar, wheat, and corn than most market analysts. Of course, it was just a hobby. I didn't invest any money in it. I studied all the available information about Keystone Development and Clayton Manning. Terry Davis was able to find more information about Clayton and his current project than I could. He checked some of the information with his friend who works at a local commercial bank. I eagerly awaited his findings. 7 weeks passed. During that time, I didn't see Marcy or hear from her. The girls called every week, but I didn't hear anything from their mother either. I felt like they were on my side, but Marcy was their mother, and I was sure they had to support her in some way. I had a few yard sales and got rid of a ton of stuff. I left enough furniture in the house to show potential buyers. A photo of Marcy and Clayton was published in the Sunday newspaper's Society column. They were at a political rally, drinking wine with local dignitaries. A few more weeks passed. Terry made me an offer on the house. It was pretty low compared to the appraisal, but they wanted to close in 60 days, which was perfect. He had an interesting biography of Clayton and wanted to talk about it. We agreed to meet for lunch. I decided to leave home for a while. I needed a vacation. Hayes Mountain was one of the best places in the county for hiking and geocaching. Unfortunately, I found all the geocaches there. However, there were 3 landmarks on the mountain. Landmarks are reference points established throughout the country by the government. Surveyors and developers use these benchmarks to determine property boundaries. They come in different shapes, but are usually metal rods embedded in concrete. Searching for benchmarks is an interesting addition to serious geocaching. I decided that today, I would find all 3 landmarks on the mountain. In addition to my GPS, I needed a metal detector. Finding a piece of rebar in the woods isn't easy, and I needed all the help I could get. The GPS would take me to the approximate area. Most of Hayes Mountain belonged to the Madison Land Trust. It covered almost 2,000 acres, but they were always looking for opportunities to expand. Most of the available land was occupied by municipalities and industrial parks, and the trust survived on donations. Next to the trust's parking lot was an orchard and a farmhouse with a large for sale sign. I parked my car and walked over to the fence by the orchard to take a look. It made me sad to think that in a short time, this beautiful property would probably be torn down to make way for construction. "Are you going to buy it or just look?" I couldn't help smiling at the old man walking toward me. He was dressed in overalls, but instead of a straw hat, he wore a John Deere baseball cap. He introduced himself as John Smurd. "Well, if I had $1 million, I'd gladly buy it from you." We both laughed. "Would you be willing to sell it?" "Well, there are people who are interested, but I'm trying to hold on to it as long as possible." Why? I was hoping the land trust would buy it, but they don't seem to have the money. They want to leave the fruit trees in their natural state, which suits me fine. But that doesn't suit the developers who want to plant everything around it. I think it would be a great addition to what we have now. How can the land trust compete with big companies? I offered them better terms. It's even listed for sale at $1 million, but I'll sell it to the trust for $600,000. The problem is that they don't seem to be able to raise that kind of money right now. If they can't do it within 90 days, I'll have to withdraw the option from that damn developer. That son of a bitch calls me every week and I'm tired of him. An option isn't a sale, right? No, the buyer is buying a promise from me to sell him the land within the next 6 months for $1 million. He pays $100,000 for the option. If he can't come up with the million, he loses the option payment. It's a good deal for me, but I don't want him to get it. He's got $1 million locked up, so he's safe. The problem is that he needs to purchase all 6 plots for the deal to go through. That's why he's willing to pay more than the land is worth. What happens if you don't sell him the option? He loses everything he has, and then some. Since the land trust can't raise the money, Keystone seems to have a good chance. However, if he doesn't get that piece of land, he'll lose the entire deal, including the money he paid for the options on the other 5 pieces. That's probably about $1 million. His supporters will leave him and abandon him to his fate. If I had the money, I'd help you. Yeah, everyone says that. We laughed again, and I went for a walk. I found his mention of Keystone interesting. These landmarks were less than a mile apart, that is, as the crow flies. On the mountain, it was twice that distance. The first 2 were fairly easy to find. They were standard surveying landmarks. The last landmark was much older and much harder to find. When I finally stumbled upon it, I discovered a small brick monument with a bronze plaque. It was buried under years of leaves and debris. I took a picture of it to post in my journal. At that moment, my life changed. The metal detector was still on. When I moved away from the marker, it beeped. The sound was faint, but it was definitely there. I put on my headphones and began scanning the area about 10 feet south of the marker. Finally, I pointed the device at the target and carefully began probing it. You don't usually find metal in the middle of the woods. 5 minutes later, I had a small metal box in my hands. It was wrapped in a heavily oiled piece of tarpaulin. There was a lot of rust on the surface, but the box itself was sturdy. The lock was made of heavy bronze, but it still worked. Often, finds of this kind on public property are considered treasure and must be turned over to the government or some historical agency. For some reason, that didn't seem like a good idea to me today. I put the box in my bag and went home. On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about what was in my little box. The first thing that came to mind was gold coins. Maybe it was full of important documents from the Civil War or earlier. The possibilities were limited only by the size of the box. I cleared the kitchen table, took out the box, and began to examine my find. I didn't want to break the lock, but I couldn't think of any other way to open it. I didn't know if the lock mechanism still worked. I decided that the lock would have to be sacrificed. My bolt cutter quickly dealt with it. Inside the box was another piece of oilcloth. I carefully unfolded it and found 12 pennies. Why would anyone want to bury 12 pennies? These weren't ordinary everyday coins, but old large cents. The newest coin was dated 1814, and the oldest was from 1793. Despite their age, the date on each coin was easy to read. Surprisingly, there was no green corrosion, which usually appears on old copper coins. I had never been interested in collecting old coins, as I thought that for the same money, I could buy newer coins with images of Native Americans. However, I had a book left to me by my grandfather called The Curiosities of Pennies. It described different types and varieties of old coins. I found it boring because I didn't have any coins like that. The book sat on the shelf, gathering dust for almost 30 years. Today, it has found a new use. I sat up until dawn with my grandfather's book and a magnifying glass. My scanner took beautiful, high-resolution photos of each coin. Every crack and scratch on the coin was clearly visible, and the condition of each coin was obvious. I slept until noon. I called work to see how things were going. I was told that Phil Williams, one of the company's executives, was interested in me. Nothing else was known. I had other things to worry about, so I didn't pursue it further. I needed to go to the bank and buy a safe. After spending several hours on the internet, I realized that my pennies were worth several $1 million. It wasn't their age that made them valuable, but their condition and variety of denominations. Now I understood why drug dealers resort to such methods of money laundering. There was no easy way to turn my precious coins into cash. I had to work hard. While having breakfast at IHOP, I noticed another photo of Marcy and Clayton in the newspaper at the opening of a new art gallery. She was wearing a black cocktail dress and holding a glass of wine or champagne. Both were smiling at the camera. Looking at the photo, I knew what to do next. Once I got the safe, I called John Smyrda and asked him to hold off on the land decision for a few days. He seemed happy to do so. I went to the land trust office and asked them to tell me how to make a donation to the organization. They were very happy to help me. There were 4 weeks left until the final divorce. For some reason, I felt that this period was very important. I spent the rest of the day looking for coin dealers and auction houses. I wasn't looking for advertisements, I was looking for lawsuits. I finally settled on Towers and Burns in New York. They were financially sound and seemed capable of handling controversial sales without much trouble or publicity. I made an appointment with them for Monday afternoon. I called the girls and asked them to be ready on Monday morning so we could have lunch together. In front of the Towers and Burns office was a magnificent showroom. It was full of glass and light. Standard collectibles were displayed in the showcases, and other numismatic paraphernalia hung on the walls. I gave my name and was escorted to a much less attractive part of the building. Welcome to New York, Mr. Simmons. I understand you have brought some interesting police officers with you to show us around the city. Is this your first time in our city? I sat down in a straight-back chair opposite James Towers. His photo was in the advertisement, but now he looked 10 years older. Thank you. My daughters attend Columbia University, so I've been here before, but never on business. I have no doubt about your knowledge of coins, but don't you have an employee who specializes in antique copper coins? If so, I think his presence would be helpful. I'm not that sensitive, and I think that's a good idea too. He leaned toward the intercom on his desk. Marie, call Cookson to my office. Maurice Cookson had published several reference books on large cents and half cents. I liked his accessibility. Mr. Cookson also looked older than his photographs. I guess no one likes to look old. Gentlemen, I have 12 special coins that I am offering for sale. I hope to sell 4 of them today and leave the 5th one at your discretion. I will leave the remaining 7 for later. If all goes well today, I will offer them to you as well. I know it seems unlikely, but I think 6 of the coins will qualify for inclusion in the list of coins subject to conditional listing. I'm sure Mr. Cookson will determine whether I'm close or not. Since coins with conditional listing status don't often appear on the market, I was hoping you would be interested. Where did these coins come from? My grandfather left them to me when he died. I don't want to offend Mr. Simmons, but that story is hard to believe. What can you show us? I laid 4 photographs on the table. Each one showed the obverse and reverse of one of the coins I had offered today. They were about 5 times larger than normal and very clear. James and Maurice studied each photograph for several minutes. Finally, James spoke. What do you think these 4 are worth? After a quick look at recent auction results, I've come to the conclusion that you could get about $1,300,000 for them. I was thinking 1 each, but your figure doesn't seem unrealistic. Maurice really knew his coins. I only want $800,000 for the whole lot, but it needs to be handled in a special way. James leaned back in his chair and smiled. I think we can work something out. What kind of special treatment are you talking about? I had a letter from the land trust explaining how to donate land. I gave it to Mr. Towers along with the advertisement for John Smyrda's garden. I want you to buy this piece of land and donate it to the Madison Land Trust. The price is $600,000. You'll get a very nice tax break and become a philanthropist. I'll take the rest of the money in cash. Give us a minute, please. James and Maurice moved to the other end of the room. A few minutes later, Maurice left. James returned to the table. Do you have the coins? Yes. I have a 5th coin that I would like to leave you. Mr. Cookson returned to the table with a purple Crown Royal bag. This time he said, we are prepared to meet your terms for the first part of the deal and hope that you will meet our terms for the second part. Then he emptied the contents of the purple bag onto the table. It turned out that there were almost 100 different coins, mostly gold, but there were some silver ones as well. The retail price of this collection is about $300,000. For a number of reasons that we won't discuss, we're having trouble selling them. However, you won't have any problems. As I understand it, you've already sold coins on eBay. Is that correct? I simply nodded. These coins, inherited from your grandfather, should sell easily, and will both come out ahead. I assure you, you won't have any trouble. He said this with a slight wink. I thought about it for a moment and agreed. I handed the 4 pennies to Mr. Towers, and we all shook hands. Now, Mr. Simmons, tell us about the 5th coin. I held the picture in my hand and looked at Mr. Cuxon. What is the most expensive 1793 strawberry you have ever seen? I've never seen one, but I think the highest rating is 12 points. I estimated this painting at 8 points, but I'm not a professional. When I said that, he wasn't looking at the painting, but at my face. They both tried to look at the painting at the same time. Cookson smiled broadly, and I saw dollar signs in Towers' eyes. How much? Best offer you can make, if you can figure out how to pay me. Would you like a cup of coffee, Mr. Simmons? Yes, black, please. They both left the room with the painting, and a few minutes later a young woman brought me a cup of coffee. Mr. Towers will be back in a few minutes. He needs to make a phone call. Will you wait? I nodded in agreement and began to drink my coffee. 30 minutes passed when Towers returned to the room with an absolutely beautiful woman. She had dark eyes, raven hair, and judging by her appearance was of Middle Eastern descent. I estimated her to be no more than 30 years old. She was well-dressed and carried herself with authority. For a moment I thought I recognized her, but I couldn't place her. Hello, my name is Letitia Rothberg. Do you have your passport, Mr. Simmons? Her voice was deep yet feminine. Yes. Good. We'll be leaving for John F. Kennedy Airport shortly to open a new offshore bank account for you. Is there anything you'd like to pass on to Mr. Towers? I handed James the 1793 strawberry, and he looked like a little boy on Christmas morning. Thank you, he said as he left the room. We never agreed on a price, but I still had the 7 coins Towers wanted. Mr. Towers agreed to look after the bag of coins until I returned. An hour later, Letitia and I were sitting on a plane, bound for the Cayman Islands. She hardly spoke. When we arrived at the airport, several photographers were eagerly waiting to take her picture. She looked annoyed, but smiled sweetly. I had no idea what was causing all the attention. It was my first time flying first class, and it went by too quickly. A bright yellow mini SUV was waiting for us at the terminal. My hostess pulled her skirt up to her thighs without hesitation and slid into the driver's seat. To my embarrassment, she noticed me glancing at her tanned legs. My confusion seemed to amuse her. 20 minutes later, we parked on the lower level of a medium-sized residential complex. Letitia Rothberg owned the entire building, but the top floor was her private apartment. Would you like anything, Mr. Simmons? A beer, please. The sight of her receding figure was no less impressive than the glimpse of her leg in the terminal. I'm not one to admire young women, but Letitia Rothberg was special. We stepped out onto a small balcony overlooking the ocean. It was beautiful, but the wind was too strong for my taste. I think she was trying to impress me with the grandeur of the place. It was beautiful, but I was more interested in the new bank account I was about to get. You don't say much, Mr. Simmons. Surely you have questions you'd like answered. I found it strange that a woman of her class and position would drink beer from a bottle. I could imagine her sipping champagne or a martini, but not beer. A figure like that wouldn't last long if she continued. I usually think it's best to wait, but I suppose you could tell me why we needed to come here to open a bank account. It's a simple, safe, and secure place to keep your money. I think it will suit you. It's just 1 coin. Yes, but you have 7 more. I'm sorry, but it still seems excessive. To my relief, we returned to the house, sheltered from the wind. Can you hold out? I brought you here to be my sex slave for a few days. I have to admit that the unexpected comment made me smile. I automatically knew it was nonsense, but I found it funny nonetheless. She had a sense of humor, she was good-looking, and she was rich. What more could a man want? If only I were 10 years younger. Don't tease an old man. We both laughed with relief. Come on, Mr. Simmons. Let's go get some fresh lobster for dinner. We finished our beers and left the house. The restaurant and food were excellent. I didn't really like the wine the hostess chose, but I tried to be polite. It didn't work. What's wrong with the wine, Mr. Simmons? Did I really show it that much? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It was involuntary, like a reflex. When I was 18, I got drunk on cheap white wine like a dog. Never before or since have I felt so awful. Every time I smell or taste white wine, I feel nauseous. I can't explain it. The wine is fine, don't worry. 5 minutes later, we were drinking 2 cold beers from bottles. Strangely, there was almost no conversation during dinner. At the end, we had fruit sorbet and coffee. Tell me about yourself. Are you married? Do you have children? What do you do? We have the whole night ahead of us, and I'd really like to know what brought us together. Too many questions. I have 2 daughters. They're both at Columbia University studying international banking or something like that. I don't really understand it, I just pay for their education. Interesting. I got my master's degree from Columbia University, and I'm one of the guest lecturers. I met both of them. Did you see them this morning? We had lunch together. They hate it when I make them skip class. You must have married early since you have 2 daughters in college. That sounds like something a man would say. I felt comfortable with this Mediterranean beauty. I could have talked to her all night. I'm currently separated from my wife. That's a strange word. I never thought I'd use it. She left me for a wealthy businessman. I think he builds shopping malls or business complexes. In any case, he has a luxury car and a large apartment. She told me she wanted to change her life. The divorce will be final in about 4 weeks. That's a silly reason to break up a good marriage. I guess everything was fine until she met that guy. Probably. She was never satisfied with my job. I had several opportunities to move up the career ladder, but she didn't want to move. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I decided it was necessary to save the marriage. Now I feel like a nobody. What do you do? There was an awkward pause. How do you tell a beautiful, rich, and successful woman that you work as a supermarket manager? She noticed my confusion and responded accordingly. It doesn't matter. We'll talk about it later. No, it's fine. I'm not ashamed of my job. It's just that being a supermarket manager isn't the kind of job that impresses women. It doesn't bother my daughters, but my wife often makes a point of not mentioning it in conversation. I can see that it bothers her. Do you like your job? Yes, and I'm good at it. The waiter brought more coffee and cleared the table. Mr. Simmons, I realize we've only known each other for a few minutes, but I believe first impressions are very important. Very briefly, what is your first impression of me? This question threw me off. If I answered honestly, I might push her away. And if I tried to flatter her, she would probably see through me and think I was a liar. What should I do? What should I do? In short, I see a beautiful, intelligent, educated, and confident young woman. She tilted her head slightly and looked at me. I noticed a slight smile. I was hoping for some honesty. I'm sorry, but we were having such a nice evening, I didn't want to ruin it. Do you really think that badly of me? I don't want you to be upset with me. Maybe that's why your wife left you for another man. If you hadn't tried so hard to please her, your marriage would have been stronger. It was harsh, but I had to admit there was some truth to it. Miss Rothberg, I find you cunning and manipulative. You use your beauty and charm to get what you want. You're used to getting everything you want, and I think you're a bit of a spoiled girl. You play with men but are afraid of commitment. From what I can tell, you know how to make money, spend it, and invest it wisely. If you weren't so obsessed with proving that you're not worse than men, you'd probably be a good mother. After those words, I felt bad, but her comment about my marriage made me angry. We just sat there staring at each other for a few minutes. Do you really think I'd be a good mother? My mood suddenly improved dramatically. During the short drive back to the apartment, everything felt pleasant again. I knew she had heard everything I said, but she seemed to accept it without objection. She needed the truth, and I gave it to her. The fact that she wasn't upset made me feel better about being honest with her. My night as Letitia Rothberg's sex slave turned out to be a little boring. It's hard to have sex in different bedrooms, but that was okay because I wasn't expecting anything anyway. The next morning, I woke up before everyone else and found that breakfast had been prepared for me. Fruit, pastries, hot coffee, and a copy of the Wall Street Journal. The wind had died down, and I happily relaxed on the balcony overlooking the Caribbean Sea. I could get used to this. Letitia joined me 20 minutes later and jokingly snatched part of the newspaper. We sat in silence, reading and sipping coffee, as if we had been doing this for years. I had known this woman for less than a day, but everything about her was natural and comfortable. I'm afraid my cell phone doesn't work here, and I really want to call my daughters. Letitia handed me her cell phone. Please use it. Cindy, it's Dad. Where are you? Is everything okay? My phone says I'm in London. I'm in the Cayman Islands. Everything's fine. I just thought I should let you know since I didn't go straight home and stayed at a friend's place. I had to use her phone. Last night, they showed your picture on TV. You were getting on the plane with Letitia Rothberg. What are you doing with Letitia Rothberg? She's a friend I'm staying with. What's the big deal? Why are you with her? Everything's fine. Nothing suspicious. I don't understand why you're so worried. Dad, that woman is a barracuda. She eats men for breakfast. Letitia brought a tray with breakfast from the balcony. When she walked by, I couldn't help myself. This is my daughter, Cindy. She's in New York. She told me to be careful because you're a barracuda. As expected, Cindy heard me say this to Letitia and sighed loudly into the phone. I could tell that Cindy and Sandy were quickly discussing something on the other end of the line. Why are you there? How do you know her? When are you coming home? Before I could answer any of her questions, Letitia was standing in front of me with her hand out, waiting for me to hand her the phone. Hi, Cindy. This is Letitia. Your father told me about you and your sister. I'll be in New York tomorrow and would like to have lunch with you. Where can I pick you up? Of course, I had no idea what they were talking about on the other end of the line. Who was that, Professor? Pause. No problem. I'll pick you up from class at 11. Okay, I'm going now. Bye. Letitia handed me back my cell phone. Your daughter said goodbye. I'm having lunch with them tomorrow. I promise to behave myself even if they think I'm a fish. She giggled a little, wiggled her bottom, and went to her room. An hour later, we were at the Federal Reserve Bank of the Cayman Islands. Under the expert guidance of my hostess, I opened my first offshore bank account, and 20 minutes later, I saw that $4 million had been deposited into my new account from Towers and Burns. I decided that was a fair price for 215 pennies. After dinner, she asked a friend to drive us to feed the stingrays. Over dinner, I asked her why she worked for a firm like Towers and Burns, and learned that she owned 60% of the company. What else can you tell me about yourself? You seem to be a big player in the global financial arena, and I'm ashamed to admit that I don't know anything about you. I was born and raised in London. My father is Israeli and my mother is Turkish. I have an MBA from Columbia University. I'm not married, but I've been engaged twice. I haven't been in a serious relationship for over 3 years. I've learned not to trust men who show interest in me. You could say I'm cynical, but I feel like most of them want something from me and have nothing to offer in return. That's a shame. I was hoping you'd give me a ride home. Does that mean you don't trust me? You need to take this seriously, you big jerk. I'm sorry if I seemed insensitive. I didn't mean to. I guess it's hard for me to understand your problem. I'll try to do better. Okay, let's calm down. We need to go to the party. We ended the evening at a cocktail party at a large hotel. Everyone knew her and treated her like a celebrity. I spent the evening trying to be even more inconspicuous than I already was. I was still wearing the clothes I had arrived in from New York. I had no idea that I would soon be heading to the tropics. At first, Letitia seemed obliged to accompany me, but I convinced her to enjoy her vacation and let me blend in with the trees where I felt comfortable. She tried her best, but spent most of the evening constantly checking where I was. Somehow, I found myself in the company of 2 Spanish-speaking gentlemen, cattle ranchers from Argentina. The conversation started with soccer and then moved on to fishing. At least the conversation was in English, probably for my sake. One of them remarked on how attractive Letitia looked, unaware that I was her escort for the evening. I felt a little flattered. My contribution to the conversation consisted mainly of smiles and nods. I wasn't knowledgeable enough about any of the topics to add anything meaningful until Ramon Duarte brought up the subject of investments. He was interested in winter wheat. I listened as he explained in detail why he was going to invest most of his money in something I clearly knew nothing about. I got the impression that he was quite wealthy, and I was a little puzzled as to how he had managed to achieve that. I usually pride myself on my ability to hide my emotions, but apparently, I failed this time. Mr. Simmons, I can see from your expression that you disagree with me about investing in winter wheat. I was caught. I was supposed to remain invisible and inaudible. My invisibility cloak had failed me. I'm sorry, Ramon. I'm afraid I'm not an investor and don't understand the intricacies of this business. I called him by his first name because I didn't feel comfortable addressing him formally. That may be so, but I have a feeling you have an opinion on the matter. I'll keep pestering you until you share it with us. I was trapped. I tried to smile. I need something to drink. For the next hour, Both gentlemen listened intently as a vegetable merchant from Alabama explained that the excellent winter wheat crop in Alberta and Saskatchewan more than compensated for the poor crop in the States. The Canadian Grain Council had leased all available silos in North and South Dakota to store the surplus and had even reserved railroad cars for short-term storage. In a week, winter wheat futures would start to fall and would continue to fall until the market stabilized. Both Canada and the US will be forced to sell wheat abroad. I had already exhausted my supply of clever phrases when Letitia appeared. Ramon and his friend were flattered that she had joined our little group and genuinely surprised when she took me by the hand and led me away. What was that, Gary? We were just talking about food, groceries. She smiled slightly at me as we walked back to the apartment. The next morning, we flew back to New York, where a group of photographers eagerly awaited her arrival. A courier from Towers and Burns handed me a small package containing the coins she had left behind. Letitia and I said goodbye, and I headed to the commuter station to fly back to Huntsville. The divorce and sale of the house went according to plan. Phil Williams from headquarters left me several messages asking me to call him. They offered me a transfer to the company's headquarters in New York again. This time, I accepted. John Smurd also left a message. He wanted to meet for lunch. At work, I hid in my locker and wished my replacements good luck. The newspaper had a photo of Clayton and Marcy at a barbecue in honor of a local politician. They looked like the perfect couple. It took me a whole day to scan and identify all the coins from the bag from New York. With 3 weeks to go before the deadline, I decided to list them on eBay as soon as possible. Everything had to be in order. The main thing was that some scumbags didn't get their hands on them. It took me a whole day to place ads for the coins and prepare all the envelopes and blank stickers for shipping. All the money went to my PayPal account and from there to my new offshore bank. Now I had the weekend to relax. My Friday lunch with John Smurd was interesting. John was very happy that I had brought Clayton on board, but he was unhappy that I hadn't gotten anything out of the deal. It would have been too complicated to explain to him. Lunch went well, and before he left, he handed me the documents for 5 acres of land on the outskirts of town. He and his wife were moving to Florida, and he wanted to get the house in order before they left. No good deed goes unnoticed. Shortly after John and I parted ways, my cell phone rang. Cindy and Sandy were flying into Nashville in 2 hours. I had enough time to meet them. Tickets to Nashville were half the price of tickets to Huntsville, and the girls were on a tight budget. I made it to the airport without a hitch and picked them up. Cindy couldn't wait to talk about Letitia. A corporate finance class for more than 300 students was in session in the lecture hall. In the middle of the lecture, the professor paused to introduce Letitia to the students. She looked like she owned the place. She spoke to the class for about 10 minutes, then announced that she needed 2 students to join her for lunch at the Westin Hotel. We couldn't believe it when she called our names. So did you like her? She's amazing, Dad. How the hell did you meet her? Well, she said she was looking for a sex slave and I was her first choice. Sandy patted me on the shoulder. That's not funny. Be serious, okay? What did you talk about at dinner? She asked about our classes in school. Sandy chuckled softly. She had a lot of questions about you. In fact, Cindy and I agree that she's interested in you as more than just a friend. I'm 10 years older than her and a couple of dollars poorer. Sorry, girls, but she's not my type. Dad, she can have any man she wants. Why you? Think about it and give us a hint. From our point of view, you're perfect, but Letitia Rothberg doesn't know you the way we do. Apparently, your mother didn't know me either. Everyone was silent for a few minutes. My comment about their mother hit them hard. I didn't want to turn my daughters against their mother and regretted what I had said. I'm sorry, girls. I shouldn't have said that. Your mother is a wonderful woman and I have no right to say such things. Don't worry, Dad. We understand more than you think. Everything was quiet for a few miles, and then, just as we crossed the Alabama state line, Sandy's cell phone rang. Hello? We got here about an hour ago. Everything's fine. Pause. You're kidding. Pause. That sounds great. I'll tell him. Thanks for calling. Bye. In the rearview mirror, I noticed Sandy giving Cindy a thumbs up. What was that? Sandy leaned over to the front seat. Guess what, Dad? Letitia is coming to Huntsville on Tuesday morning. She said you have to pay her for the night and that she expects breakfast in bed. I was flattered by the news, but I felt pressure from Letitia and now from my daughters as well. It all sounded wonderful, and I hoped I could handle it. And not just that. The weekend with the girls went great. They spent Saturday with their mother but didn't see Clayton. I asked them not to mention Letitia. We sorted out all the things they wanted to leave at the house. By the time they left, everything was ready. I paid a deposit for storage until they finished school. On the way back to Nashville, they made me promise to try to be friendly to Letitia. When I asked what they meant, Cindy replied, "Just don't make her angry." That was simple enough. They were thrilled that I was moving to the city. I still didn't understand what Letitia could want from an old man who didn't even own an Armani suit. When I got home, it was time to relax with a beer and the Sunday paper. There were no photos of Marcy and Clayton this week, but there was a short article about Keystone Development having trouble financing a local project. Winter wheat futures had fallen in price in record time. That was interesting. I called Terry Davis and asked him to come by. It wasn't quite lunchtime yet, but I thought we could talk over a couple of beers. Clayton Manning had, to put it mildly, a checkered past. Over the past few years, he had been in and out of trouble. He had spent a lot of time moving around, trying to get away from creditors and friends who had lent him money. His new project was starting to fall apart. The people and investors who had supported him were disappearing. I don't remember beer ever tasting so good. Monday morning turned out better than expected. The coins I put up for auctions sold much better than I expected. Cookson estimated their value at around $300,000. It's unlikely that they'll sell for that much, but it's quite possible that they're worth more than $200,000. In just over 2 weeks, I would be a free man. 3 months ago, that would have seemed like a disaster, but today I was looking forward to it. The people who bought the house had arranged financing and were ready to close the deal. I found it amusing that Marcy felt so comfortable with Clayton that she didn't need any of our shared belongings. I wondered if she realized how uncertain her future was. At 3 o'clock, I had a meeting with the people who bought the house. The check for $200,000 was immediately deposited into my offshore account. They didn't mind if I stayed in the house for another week. That suited us both. The next morning, I had barely finished my coffee when the phone rang. An unknown man formally informed me that Miss Rothberg would be arriving at 10:45 on Delta Flight 724. I arrived 30 minutes early. Yes, I was a little nervous. In any case, several paparazzi had already spotted her arrival and were waiting at the terminal exit. I tried not to attract attention. I parked my car in the short-term parking lot because I hadn't expected such a commotion. Instead of waiting for me to pick her up, she decided to walk with me to the car. Of course, the photographers had memorized my license plate number, and the secret was out. I wasn't used to such commotion, but Letitia didn't seem embarrassed at all. On the way home, she apologized to me. I couldn't help but remember that when she got off the plane, I wanted to kiss her. Silly old man. I was embarrassed by the sparseness of my home. Over the past few months, I had gotten rid of everything I could. All that remained was the bare necessities, which the new owner had agreed to take care of after I left. My guest seemed amused by my attempts to apologize. There was nothing edible in the house, so we stopped at a local Taco Bell. She chose. I promised her dreamland ribs for dinner. It was nice to be around a woman with a good appetite. Letitia, I'm glad you're here, but I don't understand why. I thought you were back to business. It's work, silly. I know you're moving to New York next week. You need a place to stay, and I have a spare bedroom. I came to help you pack. A truck is coming tomorrow morning to take everything that doesn't fit in the car. Just don't take the furniture, please. How did you know I was moving? It's my job. If I keep track of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. It's complete nonsense, but I've always wanted to say that. Did you conspire with my daughters? I tried to smile innocently, but it was difficult for an old man to look cunning. Her offer was unexpected, but I couldn't think of a single reason to refuse. Of course. Let's get some boxes to pack your things. I thought she would be more comfortable sitting in the conference room or somewhere at the bank, but she seemed to just enjoy my company. Still, I felt a little awkward about the age difference. In the end, we threw away more things than we packed. She had her own opinion about my wardrobe and wouldn't listen to my pleas for mercy. She promised that when I got settled in New York, she would take me shopping for some appropriate clothes. When we were done, we had more boxes than would fit in my car, but not enough for a truck. I hoped she had ordered a small van. I put away my laptop and small string printer to start bidding on eBay. We were just about to have dinner when a new surprise awaited us. There was a van in front of the house. Letitia and I watched as the driver in an elegant uniform got out of the cab with a tablet. Are you Gary Simmons? Yes. I have a delivery for you. Where should I put it? What the hell is that? A car. From Ramon Duarte. Do you have room in the garage? The spot in the garage where Marcy's Volvo used to be was empty. I pointed in that direction and nodded. I noticed that Letitia put her hand over her mouth and giggled. I'm not sure, but I think she was amused by my confusion. 5 minutes later, I was looking at a shiny orange sports car parked next to my outdated Volvo. What the hell is that? With great pride, the courier said. It's a 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider, Super Legra model. Isn't it the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? Letitia struggled to contain her laughter. She didn't laugh out loud, but you could tell she was having a lot of fun. I signed the form to have the expensive uniform sent home. I had no idea what to do with the gift, but I knew I wasn't taking it with me to New York. Get in the Volvo, Miss Funny Pants. My guest was still smiling when we pulled up to the house. I ordered a full portion of ribs and 2 pints of Foster's beer. Can you explain what's going on with the car? Ramon stocked up on winter wheat. Everyone thought he was crazy. When prices started to fall, he doubled his contracts. In less than a week, he made over $40 million. He was happy with the money, but he was even more excited by the comments about his clever move. Well, good for Ramon. I hope he didn't mention my name. He wanted to express his respect for you, but without your consent. He thanked me for bringing you to the party and asked for your address. However, I didn't know he was going to do that. The ribs arrived, and I watched mesmerized as Letitia dipped a few of them in Tabasco sauce and then dug in. God, I loved that girl. Oh, you know I'll pay you back in the morning, right? I figured as much. Don't worry about it. Ramon won't mind. He would have offered you the money, but he probably thought you would refuse. This way, you'll feel more obligated to leave it. The Tabasco made us order a few more beers. I felt good and didn't want to go home. At that moment, I would have given anything to spend the night in bed with this beautiful young coquette. I envied the elegant, charming, handsome guys who could get any girl in the world into bed in 5 minutes. The best I could hope for was a goodbye kiss. We didn't get to talk all night, and in the end, I had to go home. The morning was wonderful. All my fears proved to be unfounded. As soon as we entered the house, Letitia took me by the hand and led me to the bedroom. Being a true gentleman, I made sure to satisfy her needs first. As a reward, I got the best night of sex in my lonely life. Breakfast in bed consisted of juice, coffee, and a Danish pastry. I'm sorry, but under the circumstances, this is the best I can offer. It's the best I could hope for. Trying to eat from a tray in bed is very uncomfortable. After a few laughs and rearrangements, we went to the kitchen. Breakfast in bed sounds better than it actually is. Letitia, I don't want to ruin the mood, but I'm really curious why you chose me. I have nothing to offer you, and you deserve so much better. I've been deceived many times by cunning, lustful young lovers. I'm not going to fall into that trap again. Ah, I see. You're attracted to the fact that I'm not a scoundrel or a lecher. My guest found this amusing and laughed with relief. Gary, I was impressed by the deal you made with James in New York. I just sold a few coins. Not that it was stupid. I was intrigued by your offer to buy the land. Do you think I'm a philanthropist? Oh no, not at all. I see you as a cunning bastard who took advantage of a unique situation to frame his wife's lover. Of course, that made me smile. I was amazed by her intelligence and how well she hid it. Was that wrong? No, Gary, it was great. I was impressed and wanted to learn more about you. You couldn't have known what I was doing in New York. I knew what you were doing, but I didn't find out why until a few days later. Were you following me? Of course, I'm not stupid. I have to admit that the boost to my self-esteem was a pleasant surprise. Unfortunately, Letitia had to fly to New York early in the morning. I was very sorry to see her go. She left me with a happy heart and the key to her apartment. The Lamborghini dealer couldn't pick up the car until the next day. That was fine because I wasn't planning on driving it. The movers arrived in a small truck and took my things to New York. Terry Davis called and said that Keystone Development was experiencing serious financial problems. It seemed that Clayton had mysteriously lost almost all of his supporters, and it had happened almost overnight. Rumor had it that some people were taking things that Clayton hadn't received. That evening, my almost ex-wife came to visit me. What did I do to deserve this unexpected pleasure? I couldn't resist the sarcasm. I need to talk to you about a few things. I'm leaving in a few days, but I'll help you out however I can. I was going to take my old Volvo, but I noticed it's gone. What's that orange car in the garage? Things were starting to heat up. I'm sorry, Marcy. When you said you didn't want your old Volvo, I sold it to a dealer. He might still have it if you want. You can go take a look. Damn. I had never heard Marcy use that word before. The orange car was a gift, but I'm still going to return it tomorrow. I can't imagine myself driving that thing. There was a sticker on the window that said $225,000. Who could have given you that? Your new girlfriend? No. It was a cattle rancher from Argentina who I helped out a few weeks ago. It was just a token of his appreciation, so what else can I do for you? There was a pause in the conversation. I could tell Marcy wanted to say something but didn't know how. Would you like something to drink? I have a beer and diet soda. No, I can't stay long. How did you get here? I don't see your car. I took a taxi. Gary, you said you were leaving in a few days. Can I stay at the house for now? The house is sold. We closed on it yesterday, and the new owners are moving in on the weekend. They said I could stay until Friday, but not longer than that. What's wrong with the apartment by the river? She didn't answer that question. There was a short pause, and then she asked, what happened to the money you got for the house? Now things were getting really interesting. I was starting to like the way the conversation was going. I spent it all. You said clearly that you didn't want any of it. I spent all the money on furnishing the new apartment I'm moving into. Where are you moving? New York. I got a promotion and a big raise. I have to be there on Monday. I wasn't going to tell Marcy that I was going to live with Leticia. I also wasn't going to tell her about the bank account in the Cayman Islands. Oh, you never told me what happened to the apartment. It was just a rental. The lease expired and the owner didn't want to renew it. Where are you staying now? We're staying at the Holiday Inn until Clayton finds a new place. I see. Now I understood why she wanted to move into our old house. Marcy looked a little confused. She wanted to ask for help but didn't know how to bring it up. I realized she was in trouble. There was another pause in the conversation. Is there anything I can do to help? Could you give me a ride to the Holiday Inn? The first half of the trip went smoothly. I understand you have a girlfriend. Tell me about her. She's not really a girlfriend, more of a business partner. What kind of business? You don't have a business. You're right. I'm just a salesman at a grocery store. I can't lie to you, can I? Marcy was silent. She stared out the window and I heard her whisper under her breath, "Asshole." It was the perfect moment to vent all my frustration. It was the perfect chance to let her know how much the newspaper photos had hurt me. But instead I just smiled to myself. She felt guilty, and I felt redeemed. I felt guilty for a moment, but it passed quickly. I dropped her off at the motel entrance. She walked away without looking back or saying goodbye. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt satisfied. The week was going great. On Thursday morning, I unexpectedly received the final divorce papers. They came early, but who could I complain to? The front page of the Huntsville newspaper had a photo of Leticia Rothberg arriving at the airport. Your sincere friend was holding her hand. A copy of the newspaper is delivered free to every room at the Holiday Inn. Marcy can read it at breakfast. I was sure Clayton would explain to her who Leticia was. I emptied my safe deposit box at the bank. I'll need my 7 pennies in the near future. I thought Leticia would ask about them while she was here, but she never mentioned them. All our conversations were strictly social. If she was interested in me for business reasons, she never let on. I set a buy now price on all the coins in the auction. More than half of them were sold at that price. I spent the rest of the day packing the sold coins and preparing them for shipment. The rest of the auction was scheduled to end on Friday afternoon. If all PayPal payments went through, all coins would be shipped that same day. Unscrupulous buyers would have to wait until Monday. Early Saturday morning, I was on my way. I transferred most of the money from PayPal to my account in the Cayman Islands. I left a small amount in PayPal in case I saw something I just couldn't resist. The people who bought the house arrived just as I was about to leave. We came out ahead. The trip north would take about 12 hours without delays. Leticia was at the apartment and promised to cook a home-cooked dinner for my arrival. I wondered who would be doing the cooking. It was nice to know that I was still man enough to win the heart of such a beautiful woman. I had no doubt that I would live up to her expectations. I was just crossing the Virginia state line on Highway 81 when Cindy called. It turned out that Clayton Manning had fled town, leaving Marcy without a car, without a place to stay, without money, and with a huge motel bill. I asked Cindy what I should do. She laughed and replied, "Smile." Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next video.